All right, we did it. Second read of Deadhouse Gates, and it is just as good as it was the first time. Now, the first part of this is going to be spoiler-free about the book because I want anyone who is interested in reading this series, which I think you should, to be okay with watching this. And I'm going to try to give my best pitch of why you should, and maybe what my experience was, because it was a different experience from my first time to my second time. And then I'm going to go into favorite character moments, something like that. And I'm going to start talking maybe a little bit of... Actually, I won't even do that. I won't do spoilers. This whole thing, you can watch the whole thing and you should be okay with whatever. I'll do some other videos that are more series specific, but we can definitely talk about this book without talking about full series spoilers. So if you are thinking about, first just about people who haven't read either of the books, Gardens of the Moon or Deadhouse Gates, or perhaps have gotten through Gardens of the Moon and you've heard the thing where you have to at least finish Deadhouse Gates to kind of know what the series can be like, or how I would say it is you got to at least get to book 3, but that's a big ask. It is a big ask, but if you have any sort of interest as you're reading Gardens of the Moon and Deadhouse, I can almost guarantee you that you will find Memories of Ice to be amazing. Now, this isn't I gotta fix my microphone. This isn't a Memories of Ice review. This is a Deadhouse review. And so my first reaction to Gardens of the Moon was I am confused, but I thought it was kind of cool, and everyone said to look ahead and eventually you'll kind of get on board. It's okay to not know everything. And the same sort of goes with Deadhouse Gates. And that's true even the second time as I went through. So much more became more clear, but there are still a few things where even as someone who's read all the 10 books, I think, well, how does that work? I still don't know all the answers. And I suppose a part of the reason for that is we do have other side series and things that even explain things further. But as you go through the second time especially, you will be pointing at things like the Leonardo DiCaprio meme where you just recognize things. And I mentioned that in my Gardens of the Moon review as well, but even more so here. Now, there's a big tone shift between Gardens of the Moon, which is kind of more assassins on rooftops, and I mean, I don't know if you'd call it fun, but it sort of is. A lot of action and excitement and things like that, even though things are kind of confusing. And then you shift to this other continent and it goes, it is the theme or the tone of the book is children are dying. It's a lot of despair in the air. There are people getting crucified and there are civilians dying and children's, it's a very dark, one of the darkest of all the books as far as a complete book. There are dark moments in many of these books, especially as we get further in. But as a whole, the tone is pretty much filled with despair. Now, the great thing is once you get to Memories of Ice, the third book, I would say that the tone is balanced to kind of have a lot of that excitement and fun filled with despair. Now, things are very dark once you get to this book, but like the what am I trying to say? The threat and the stakes are ramped up even more maybe than Deadhouse Gates in some ways. it kind of balances the tone maybe a little more for people who would bow out of Deadhouse Gates, because it is repressive. And if you thought, is this whole series going to be like the same tone as Deadhouse Gates? I don't know if I can go through 10 books of that. I can say that while there are moments where the tone is similar, it isn't quite so steeped in despair as you continue going on. It finds a good way of ramping up the stakes all the time, but maybe in a way that doesn't kind of leave you so with a sinking feeling. Now, I really love Deadhouse Gates amidst all of that, because I also find a lot of light in Deadhouse. Now, it comes in the form of mercy and sacrifice, which also kind of has this negative sort of feeling to it in a positive way. Like when you see someone sacrifice, you feel for the characters who love this person or animal who is sacrificing themselves for this moment. And that doesn't give away anything. It's just kind of an idea, but there is a lot of mercy and beautiful things. There is beauty in this book, especially in the ending. And war is dark and bleak, and so much of this book is about power and the results of what people that are given undue power, the consequence of that on regular people. It has a dynamic of gods as well and mortals that is interesting. It has a strong emphasis on betrayal, and you just see some of the worst things in this book, which it shouldn't scare you off from it. I hope that, in fact, it would make you want to read it. I was reading something with my youngest daughter, and we've been reading it for about a week, and we're about 60 pages in or so, and it's funny and fun. But once you get 60 pages in, if nothing really has happened yet in terms of something bad happening, it can become a boring book. And luckily yesterday, someone just went missing, some character that we really, really love. And that was when my daughter is, now she's very invested to make sure that this person is going to be okay. And I feel that same way as we go from Gardens of the Moon to Deadhouse Gates. I love Gardens of the Moon. I really do, especially on the second read. But Deadhouse Gates is where I finally feel like there are characters in here that I really, 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 really loathe. And I want to see that they get what's coming to them, or some kind of resolution. And as far as Deadhouse Gates, I don't, either time reading it, I don't especially absolutely love or absolutely hate any character. So the action is there, but I just am not as emotionally invested as when I get to Deadhouse Gates. And I think even on the first read, that's why we tell people to at least get to the end of Deadhouse Gates, because I feel like it will be where maybe it gets the same sorts of hooks in you. And certainly on a second read, that is the case. My favorite book in the world is The Count of Monte Cristo. And early on in that book, there is this brutal betrayal. And I'm not talking about the movie, and I'm not talking about the BBC version or whatever. I'm talking about the book, which is the prime way of examining that. That's the best way of having that story. Just a terrible betrayal, and you just hate a couple characters, and you just love a couple other characters. And I I just I love when a book can really get its hooks in you, and it's too bad that maybe it takes a while for people to get that in Malazan. But when it does, like I read all the 10 books last year, and I'm already doing a reread, and I'm going to be doing a lot of these other ones. And man, if you can get to Memories of Ice, and I really think that if you get here, then you're going to be on for a great ride. Deadhouse Gates is a super special book in a lot of ways. And in some ways, it feels like been trying to think about how to put this. It feels like sort of book 6 or 7 of a series in the way that it gives so much fan service towards people who do love the series, especially in a reread, but it so feels like something that is for people who are already very invested in it. And it may be if you're not super invested in that sort of thing, like I don't know if this is even making sense. If you know what I'm meaning, but it just feels like maybe where other books would ramp you up in a more gradual way, it just dumps you into the lore, and you have to try to kind of gather everything. Now the hints are there. I think Malazan gets a bad reputation for being too tricky to you know to understand everything, but I'm an idiot, and I understand at least the parts that keep me going in the series, and I really think that there isn't so much thrown at you where you can't enjoy yourself as you're going through. I think you should just, if you're going to read this series, take your time at least with the first 2 books to make sure your foundation of knowledge is pretty solid. And you can do that through these PowerPoints and podcasts and videos and wikis. And I think if you can get that, and you can really understand things as you're going along, there are chapter summaries and things that I wish I would have looked at maybe my first time through, at least for the first 2 books. And that would have maybe helped me to launch off in a little bit easier way. Now, once you get going with sort of how things work, for me, it happened sort of in book 3, where I really started to feel comfortable with how things are going, and I didn't feel like I was in the deep end so much, even though he'll still throw stuff at you. But yeah. Now, as far as where I would rank these first 2 books on a reread, uh, I liked them both so much on my first read, and I don't know if I would rank them higher in retrospect compared to the other books that I have read, but holy smokes, Deadhouse Gates especially was like a whole new experience. A whole new experience the second time. Like a solid 5 out of 5 for me, for just being exactly what I was looking for. Now, here are my top 10 ish characters of Deadhouse Gates. And these aren't my series favorite characters, but these are the ones that really shined for me in my second read through, which was different than the ones that I was really loving my first time. My honorable mentions would be the Bowden, Haboric, Felicin trio, which were practically my number 1 group that I was most invested in my first time through. This time they kind of, I already had that first time where I was so invested in. They're kind of side characters for me as far as what the impact they had on me this second time through. Same goes with Absalar and Crocus, which, as far as if I'm talking about the whole series, those 2 are some of my favorites. They would be even in my top 10. But as far as how they shined in this book, maybe didn't so much for me in the reread as well. Culp was really close to being in my top 10. Really love him. Nil and Nether, I just love Nil and Nether, and they had moments. If you've read the book, uh, actually, I'm gonna now say if you've read the book, I'm gonna start talking about spoilers about the characters in this book, but I won't talk about in the future book. Nil and Nether, the stuff with the horse, is just heartbreaking to me, but also so heartwarming to show really what these characters are like. I think I sort of saw them more as just very small mages, mages in kids' bodies, like Sormo. I guess I could throw Sormo in there as well. Uh, but really, there's just so much going on with them. But I really love that they are really grieving this horse that they are supercharging to get the other horses up the hill. I just love that. Lestara is a character I love in the series, and she had her moments in this one, but still an honorable mention. And of course, Squint maybe was my top one character in Deadhouse the first time through, just because of that single moment where we just grieve for the guy. He and everyone else just loves Coltane, and the part that's so, that he's going to kill his hero as an act of mercy, and that was something that just was such a shock to me the first time through. Now the second time through, it still impacted me, but I was just waiting for it to come, waiting for it to come. And Coltane and Bolt, the second time through, just missed my top 10 most impactful characters, even though both of them are great and they just shine when they're on. I know that's some people's like favorite character, Coltane. Never was one of my favorite characters. I don't know if he was in my top 50 of the whole series. I can't recall. Probably was. Bolt really shined, and anyway. Top 10 favorite character-ish moments or character groups. Number 10 was Ikariam and Mappo. They would have been maybe number 1 my first time through. This time I was just so ready for their... Like, nothing was super new about them the second time through, because I just know those characters so well now. Still love every time we got them, but there weren't a lot of big surprises this second time as we go through, except for if you've read the book, and of course this is spoilers. I forgot that it wasn't actually Ikariam who destroyed Mappo's city. So I went through the rest of the series, I think, thinking that, and not realizing that it was like this kind of setup to get Mappo on board, with guiding him towards this Azath house to imprison Ikariam, right? To get him kind of locked in there. Number 9, I'm just going to add Gessler, Stormy, and Truth, as well as Lagana Breed, the Talani Mass. They were characters that I was looking forward to more getting. They maybe weren't even in my top 10 the first time through, and weren't really. A lot of people love these characters throughout the series, and they are trending up for me, but still aren't really in my top 5. But they shined. They shined. I mean, they literally kind of shined, right? Pearl. I could have put Pearl a little bit higher on the list, because of just how intriguing I think, as soon as we get to Callum on his way to Malaz City, and we get Pearl with this, what was the altar, I can't remember. It started with an S, but Really, really, really great. And I know we get more Pearl coming up in the series. Going to have my eye out on for that guy, and just think Pearl is a fantastic character. And I could also maybe put Lestara alongside Pearl as we kind of got them together for some of this. Shadow Throne, and Cotillion. I will say Cotilion's best moment for me was when he's talking to Panic, Apt's little familiar kid with the one eye, and saying that, kind of reassuring this boy that it wasn't his fault why he went through all that he did. You know how kids kind of sometimes feel like a parent, parents got divorced because of them, or something happened and it was their fault, and they kind of carry that, and you can see that happening. You can see so much sadness in this book, and Panic has this moment where he's carrying that, and I love Cotillion, Uncle Cotillion, as we're starting to see like a little soft moment from that guy. And Shadow Throne, I think when they bring all these children to his realm, it's just funny to me how he responds to that, and then he kind of pawns that off on Callum and Manala. Next one's Lacine. I was so looking forward to that interaction with Callum and Lacine. We don't get a lot of Lacine moments. We're mostly just talking about her. That moment, though, in my first read, when we get Callum and Lacine, that was the moment where I was sure that we were in good hands as far as Steven Erikson was going to take care of us, and really had great things planned, and wasn't just going off flying off the seat of his pants, but he really had nuance in the way that he was bringing this along for so long, for 2 books the first time through. That's what, 1,600 pages or something? Maybe 1,500? We think that we're going all this way and we are going to kill Lacine. And then we get through this 800-page book, and it doesn't end up being the case. And we have this small interaction, and where, even though I don't necessarily like Lacine anymore, I'm not rooting for Lacine, it's just such a great nuanced scene between the two of them. Sorry, I got a cold, so I'm kind of talking through it's like my nose is plugged, but I love that interaction there, and I can't wait to get to Path of Ascendancy, which I believe will probably have more Lacine in it, or it will be, the whole Malazan Empire other series, whichever one has more Lacine in it, that's the one I want to read, even though I'm going to read all of them. I really like the bad guys in this. They really shined this second time through. Malik Rel, just such a little weasel. Actually, it's Pormqual, who's such a little weasel, who's also in my top 5, and Corbolo Dom, who's just terrible. They provided 3 great people to absolutely loathe. Speaking of people who shined that you just hate, but you just love to hate them, Nethpara and Lanestro, the nobles in the Chain of Dogs, are my number 4, who I just love to hate these guys, but they just shined every time they would open their stinking mouths, and Nethpara sure got what was coming to him. My last 2, my number 3 and 2 spot were tricky. These could kind of go either way. I have Apt and Panic as my number 3, who really, I understood Apt so much more the second time through. They didn't really. I just saw it as a weird, creepy, demony thing, but I saw it so much more as its own character this second time through, as it followed Callum along. And I think the reason why I did, anyway, I'm not going to go into that because it'll be a big tangent. But I love Apt and Panic this second time through. My number 3. Number 2 is probably my same number 2 as it would be before, or even number 1 last time. I love Duiker, or Dooker, or whatever, however you're supposed to say it. And I'm going to put List as well because of just how much I enjoyed that character the second time through, as he kind of is tagging along with this historian and then goes into his war, and we know what happens with List. But I love viewing the world through Duiker. Now, he is super pessimistic as we go along. But I thought that maybe we would get more of him in the rest of the series. Won't say what happens or but he's a great POV for this, and obviously we get more talk about Duiker, I'll say that. And but I thought we would, I love the character. I love the character, and he's still my number 2. I just connect so much with that guy for some reason. I don't know if other people do, but I sure do, and I love him. And my number 1 character, just my biggest jump up the list, who just skyrocketed up my top 100 list. I left him at number 49 in my top 100. It is Callum, who I don't know where I would put him in my top 100 now. But as far as Deadhouse, he just shines in Deadhouse Gates. And I know he just shines as well in House of Chains. And I love the character. I think Quick Ben was my guy who I just love so much. And I still love Quick Ben, but holy smokes, I might like Callum equally as much or even more than Quick Ben this second time through. And I love Manala as she's kind of following and pursuing Callum. And I'm going to throw Keneb in there as well, just because Manala and Keneb are related. And Keneb didn't really shine for me until we get later in the series, I think House of Chains, when we hear more about him. But really looking forward to getting him as well. I don't know. Maybe if I was thinking, I would maybe put Callum in my top 10 in retrospect. But I know that as soon as I get to Memories of Ice, I'm going to be like, oh, Callum's number 80 or something, because I love all these other characters. A lot of my favorite characters either get introduced or they get featured once more in Memories of Ice, and I'm so looking forward to it. Look at my Memories of Ice. If this is your first time seeing my channel, it doesn't really show very well, but it is just, it is marked and highlighted all the way through, right? I just loved it. I loved it. I can't wait to get to it, and I was considering reading House of Chains next. But I think I'm going to go to Memories of Ice just to keep it, the same. But I was considering doing House of Chains and then doing Memories of Ice and then doing Midnight Tides and then Night of Knives and all that. But holy smokes, I just want to get through these first five books so I can start adding new stuff as well into the series. But I'm going to wait until at least probably, I think I'm going to go Midnight Tides, Night of Knives, The Bone Hunters, Return of the Crimson Guard, Reaper's Gale, something like that, and then whatever. But and I might even read a couple little things, the Tales of Corbel, Broach, and Boach Lane, or whatever, before going into Memories of Ice. So we'll see. Anyway, those are my full thoughts of things after my second read of Deadhouse Gates, and I'll probably do another video or two talking about maybe some specific things, but man, just great. Bye.